Hello, folks. Welcome back to World War II TV. And expanding on his appearance a few months ago, talking about Lend-Lease aircraft, the Soviet Union, Ilya Grinberg returns to the channel to talk in more detail about the P-39 in Soviet use. His website, lendlease.net, is listed in the description below. I can't wait to speak to him again. We haven't had a good old aircraft show for a long time. So good afternoon, Ilya. How are you today?
Good afternoon. I'm well. I hope everybody is doing well as well.
Good. So we were just chatting before going online and about the very binary nature of World War II history in some cases now. The Tiger tank is either the best tank of World War II or it's the worst tank of World War II. And I think we'll get into it later on. The P-39 has suffered from a bit of that. It's either awful or it's brilliant. And as your research as it will show, it was never brilliant, but it did what it was supposed to do. And do you get annoyed by this swing where everything either has to be amazing or terrible? I find it very frustrating.
It is frustrating because, people have prejudices, opinions that were actually cultivated for years, if not for decades. It's very hard to actually abandon these beliefs, but do diligence, do your research.
Yeah.
Opinions will change.
Well, we'll fire up the slides. And folks, I expect a lot of the questions you are thinking of asking will be answered by Ilya as we go along. But of course, if you do have questions, fire away. But I'm going to hand over to our guest to take us through the P-39. So over to you, sir.
All right, here we go. Let's talk about P-39 in the Soviet use. I will talk about the nature of air war in the West and East. And you will see that it was completely different. So what we know for sure, what we think we know, but don't really, so it would be true or false quiz. What Soviet fighter pilot Memoirs can tell us, combat role of P-39 in Red Air Force, what they really thought about the Airacobra. And then we will talk about famous P-39 aces.
Brilliant.
So, let's move on. Character of air war in the West. So for Britain and United States as maritime powers, how would you project your power? Navy and air power, which means large number of high-flying multi-engine bomber aircraft, new generation of fighter aircraft capable of intercepting enemy's bomber at high altitudes and escorting their own. So that was the idea. And I actually steal the line from Richard Overy, general air strategy, strategic application of air power. In the East, Germany and Soviet Union are continental powers. So they primarily focus on air support of ground forces. And this is called limited air strategy. So for Germany, the tip of the spear basically was the advancing panzer columns supported by low-flying Stukas. And of course, you need fighter support for them. Likewise, level bombers need escorts. So the critical role of air power was understood in terms of combined arms warfare. The air war on the Eastern Front became mostly tactical one with the stress on supporting of ground forces. And clearly, if you support ground forces, you don't fly at 30,000 feet. It's much lower than that. So to move on, let's take another look at Lend-Lease aircraft to the Soviet Union. Close to 3,000 Hurricanes, 1,347 Spitfires. Most of them came later in the war. And the majority of them, like Mark 9s, were not deployed in combat. They were used in air defenses. P-40 was a substantial supply, 2,100. P-39, the largest of them, 4,952. A handful of P-47s, quite substantial number of P-63s. And note that Spitfire 9s and P-63s were high-altitude fighters, but they were not used in combat. They were sent to the air defenses. Then we have bomber aircraft, 2,700 of A-20s, 861 of B-25s. That's the largest number supplied, more than British received. 709 of C-47s, 86s, 185 of Catalinas and Normans. Pay attention to the number of P-39s, 4,952. So what we know for sure about P-39? So Bell Aircraft Corporation, my neighbors, produced 9,585 Airacobras from 1939 to 1944. The Soviets received 4,952 of them, which is over 50% of production. Was heavily armed, 37 millimeters gun, cannon in the center, 50 caliber, 30 caliber. It was actually designed around the cannon. P-39 had limited range, 430 to 690 miles. Performance did not match P-38, P-47, P-51, or carrier fighters at altitudes above 15,000 feet, although they were not operational during P-39 combat deployment area. So P-40s and P-39s were the only game in town. And I should tell that they were essentially, P-39 was designed with a turbocharger, but the lack of technology, it took a long time to actually iron out deficiencies. So General Arnold said, skip it, dump it, just put it without supercharger. We need it now. We don't have time. So that actually bought time for development of turbochargers for P-38 and P-47. And later, obviously, so that was the name of the game. So British Royal Air Force didn't like it. U.S. Army Air Corps pilots didn't like it. They were happy to transition to P-38s and P-51s from P-39s. So whatever the reasons were, all lies in the air strategy. What altitudes you're operating at. So what we think we know, but actually we don't. So this is a quiz, true or false. So P-39 was not a competitive air-to-air fighter at any altitude. Is it true or false? False. Soviet Air Force deployed the P-39 primarily in close support as a ground attack role. True or false? The answer is false. 37 millimeter cannon was effective against tanks. Long hold belief, and the answer is no, it's false. The P-39 was particularly adept at killing tanks. Clearly false. The Airacobra was never outstanding in combat, and I will prove that this is absolutely not true. So let's move on. It was actually the right tool in the right place, considering that its best performance envelope was just at these altitudes under 15,000 feet. And with proper tactical use, it became an effective warplane on the Eastern Front. I was just rereading Memoirs of Hauptmann Lippert from 2JG52, and the episode that he mentioned was that they were ready to attack a group of Sturmowicks when they saw like a pair of Cobras attacking them from vertical, from the sun. So they maneuvered, tried to escape to no avail. They climbed to like 10,000 feet. They were bounced by another pair of Cobras. Finally, they reached 18,000 feet. When Lippert says, we never saw Russian pilots at these altitudes, they were bounced there. So it's not 15,000 feet. Okay, it was 18,000 feet, and they were there. They were waiting. Okay, so then these aircraft came equipped with full communication suite, excellent radio, navigational equipment, excellent armament. This combination of radio communication, the rugged all-metal airframes, powerful armaments, sufficient numbers deployed, that's also very important, allowed for the implementation of advanced tactics on a mass scale. And essentially, this advanced tactics was pretty much copy of the German, of the Luftwaffe tactics. So they transitioned from flights of 3 to flights of 2, pairs, vertical maneuvering, radio vectoring, radar applications on a substantial scale. And it took time, obviously, to learn these new tactics, learn new techniques. So Cobra was perfect for that. What the pilots thought and performance of P-39 in the early days, especially in the Northern Theater, when they were first to receive it around in Murmansk, Stalin wrote to President Roosevelt, the difficulties of delivery are reported to be due primarily to shortage of shipping. To remedy the shipping situation, the Soviet government would be prepared to agree to a certain curtailment of US arms deliveries to the Soviet Union. We should be prepared temporarily fully to renounce deliveries of tanks, guns, ammunition, pistols, etc. Badly in need of increased deliveries of modern fighter aircraft, such as Airacobras and certain other supplies. It should be borne in mind that the Kitty Hawk is no match for the modern German fighter. War experience has shown that the bravest troops are helpless unless protected against air attack. That was October 7th, 1942, the heat of Stalingrad battle. So the P-40s didn't show themselves very well in previous battles around Moscow. And operations of P-39s in the Northern Theater proved very successful. So the word came to Stalin and he said, give me more Cobras. I need them. All right. So after the war, many Soviet aces published their memoirs. And it was really interesting to observe. I'm not a big fan of memoirs. They are supplemental material. Now, with availability of archival documentation, things are slightly different. But it's interesting to see their perception. So they talk about nature of air warfare on Eastern Front. Life in a typical Soviet fighter unit is described in details. Roles and missions of fighter units in general. Roles and missions of P-39 units in particular. German fighter and bomber tactics. Soviet tactics, techniques, and procedures. And of course, they describe personalities of greater and lesser known pilots. So you can have a picture what people thought, what people saw. It's amazing. It's really, really interesting. If you just take away, all the politics and ideology, it's a great way of confirming certain things. So what do they say about Airacobra? They describe ground vectoring and use of radar and radio. So they are controlled by the radio from command posts. Typically, big shot generals were doing that. Detailed description of Soviet fighter tactics and changes in the tactics. Numerous descriptions of air-to-air engagements, very detailed. They talk about ground attacks at right angle, priority locomotive, tank cars, troop compartments, flat cars. Attack road convoys from front or rear, strafing. Bombs were hung on P-39s in January 1945. Out of 1,800 pages of memoirs, only one mention of P-39 use against tanks. And it's not just use against tanks. They were just shooting at tanks. Doesn't mean that they killed them. Only one mention. 1,800 pages. So think about it again. Tank buster? No. So the famous Soviet ace, Pakryshkin, who was commanding the 9th Guards Air Division and was a fighter pilot since day one from June 22nd, 1941. He was a great tactician and mentored a lot of his fighter pilots' friends. So he mentioned this in his memoir. He who is above his enemy is master of the airspace. Altitude is speed. Speed is altitude. Maneuver from altitude gives speed. Speed provides the energy to acquire altitude. Rapid vertical maneuver permits surprise attack and creates greater angular displacement. To destroy an enemy aircraft, fire should be conducted from all weapons, precisely aimed, from close range, point blank, at vitally important parts of the enemy aircraft. So he essentially conveyed this through seminars, through debriefing to his unit, and that was pretty much the formula of victory. Isn't that the same as the Germans did? Oh, absolutely. So he continues with his admiration of P-39, and he said, "I decided to study thoroughly the peculiarities of this fighter and remove the dangers thus revealed from me and from the pilots of our units. We had to fight with this aircraft, and lack of confidence in one's combat equipment reduces initiative. This could lead to unjustified losses. I soon began to feel that this fighter plane had become as if it were an extension of my body and of my aviation mindset." So once again, mastery of equipment is very important. It's not the airplane, it's who is sitting between the backrest and the stick. It's the pilot. So after the flight schools, new pilots come to the combat units. They have to be retrained, essentially. So, tactics, techniques, procedures, and that's what Petryshkin was pretty good at. He conducted his own school after the sorties. If dual control flight were available, they used them. Local area flights to master required pair maneuver skills, prove proficiency, a lot of training, paired with combat experienced pilots. They will not send the green ones straight to the battle, especially in 43. In 41, that was not the case. They had to throw everything they had. Familiarization flights up to enemy territory, controlled access to combat missions, required post-flight analysis of all training and combat sorties. That was very important to gain proficiency. So what are the missions? What were the missions for Soviet fighter units? That would be protect ground units against enemy air attack, escort Sturmovix and bombers, suppress AAA in target area of bombers, reconnaissance, ground and air, very important one. Free hunt over land or sea. That was not basically encouraged. It's only 1.9% of all sorties by the Soviet Air Forces were for free hunt. Attack soft ground targets, troops, truck columns, towed artillery, supply dumps, locomotives, rail cars, airfield, aerostats, barges, small naval craft, etc. Guard high-value friendly objects such as river crossing sites, amphibious landing force, reserves, headquarters, obviously air defense of large cities like Moscow. Only one single general mention of employment against tanks, as I mentioned before, in over 1,800 pages.
And that is a hell of a lot of jobs for one type of aircraft, Ilya. I mean, yeah, we talk about certain aircraft. I mean, I'm thinking of like the Lysander, for example, well known for taking SOE agents into France. It was very good at that one thing. They're expecting a lot of different roles off this aircraft. I mean, basically everything. It's
basically every single fighter unit will do these jobs. Okay, absolutely. So Cobra was not an exclusion from that.
Yeah. We had a question from Andreas about whether the instrument panel was in English or Russian.
No, it was in English.
Right.
They had to learn. They had to learn. Okay.
Thank you.
So now let's talk about P-39 operations versus German tanks. Or was it? So here is what Mikhailik, the fighter pilot and ace, describing combat in Poland in late 1944. Along with the Sturmovix, we fighter pilots also conducted attacks on trucks with infantry and on tanks, and most often did so along with vanguard detachments, creating penetrations and panic in the enemy forces. And this is the only mention firing at tanks. He didn't say that they were successful. Kozhevnikov, another fighter pilot, P-39 ace, while flying recon mission, observed accumulation of out-of-fuel German tanks. Sturmovix were brought over three-day periods. That was a lot of tanks, I guess. And they were stuck because they were short on fuel. So Sturmovix attacked immobile tanks and self-propelled artillery, while P-39s attacked columns of German fuel trucks moving forward to refuel these same enemy vehicles. Early August 1944 in Poland, Pakryshkin's division, as I said, he was commanding 9th Guards Fighter Division. Command post of his division came under attack by German tanks, and it was defended by Soviet T-34 tank unit. Pakryshkin to T-34 unit commander: "Our cannons will not penetrate tank armor. We will strafe the other vehicles." The Soviet T-34s damaged or destroyed approximately 30 German tanks. A flight of P-39s that was launched set on fire several armored transporters and trucks and defeated the enemy infantry soldiers. Now let's take a look at the cannons. So we have the Russian VIA 23mm, M4, that's the 37mm installed on P-39, and S-37 Russian 37mm cannon, and S-45 45mm cannon. So you can take a look at the projectile mass, and M4 37mm, that's kind of pretty substantial. Muzzle velocity not so great. Rate of fire only 130 rounds per minute, and the mass of a 1 second burst is 1.41 kilograms. It's worth mentioning that the Soviet Air Force was not very successful mounting either 37 or 45mm cannons on the Il-2. They had mounted them at certain batches of Il-2, but that did not prove very effective. The method of killing tanks was the bomblets, shaped charges. A direct hit on the top of a side of a tank was required for that. They were successful in that, not just killing them with the guns. They used 23mm in Yak-9T, but it was not armor piercing at all. So again, 37mm armor pierced round penetration data, muzzle velocity 1,825 feet per second, penetration capability, you can read that, 1 inch from 500 yards, from 1,000 yards, 0.6 inches for Hammer-Chinas plate, and for face hardened plate 0.8 inches and 0.4 from 500 yards and 1,000 yards. And now take a look at the thickness of armor of German tanks. So this table clearly shows that 37mm armor piercing projectile theoretically could penetrate top of hulls and or turrets of Panzer III and Panzer IV under optimum conditions. Panther is borderline vulnerable to turret top strike. Target 1 and Target 2 not vulnerable in any aspect. So let's take a look at the ammunition that was shipped to the USSR. 37mm shell fixed, M54 high explosive, 1,232,991. 37mm fixed M80 armor piercing, none was shipped. So this is also on my website, Land-Lease shipment document. And as you can see, if you don't have 37mm armor piercing shells in your supply chain, what are we talking about? How can it penetrate tank armor? It can't, because they did not have this capability on P-39. So clearly it was not a tank buster. So conclusion is very clear. Although some older model German tanks were vulnerable to 37mm armor pierced around penetration of top of turret, this ammunition type was not available in the Soviet supply system. It is therefore highly unlikely, if not possible at all, that this aircraft was employed as a tank buster on the Eastern Front. And why would you do that if you have a large quantities of Sturmovix that were optimized for this kind of work?
But I think we're all guilty in all theaters of thinking about tank busters. And I always, a lot of the reason I put that down is to the amazing aviation paintings we have. I'm thinking of the Falaise Gap and, you know, and typhoons flying over the columns of vehicles. And yet the data on Mortan, the data taken by the Royal Air Force is that like 85% of the vehicles there were knocked out by artillery, and it's the soft skins and the fuel valves that get it. So I think all of us are guilty of thinking that I mean, obviously some tanks are knocked out by aircraft. I'm not saying they're not, but I think the tank buster is a bit of a red herring.
Exactly. So what did the headquarters think about P-39? So we know what the pilot thought about it.
Yeah.
They highly praised it. But what the generals were thinking about it. So here is the excerpt from the report of the headquarters of the 8th Air Army. Among the best modern fighters such as Yak-1, Yak-7B, La-5, and Airacobra, the latter has the lowest losses. It has 52 sorties and 55 hours for one combat loss. Yak-1 and Yak-7B have 45 sorties and 38 hours for the former, and 44 sorties, 42 hours for the latter. Lower losses of Airacobras result from its good armor protection, powerful weapons, and better visibility compared with Yak-1 and Yak-7B, with other performance parameters being equal. That's pretty revealing. Another report from headquarters of the 4th Air Army states that the Airacobra is equal to the latest types of Bf-109s in vertical maneuver, and at all altitudes exceeds the Bf-109F and G in horizontal maneuver. In continuous dive, it easily outperforms Bf-109 of all modifications. The report specifically mentioned the exceptional effectiveness of the armament. The positioning of firearms ensures the destruction of a target from 2-3 short bursts. One direct hit is the enemy aircraft. But I have to mention that because of the low rate of fire from M4 cannon and its ballistics, it was pretty much you have to come really close. You have to come close, point blank, and then you will be successful. If you will carefully look at the nose of P-39, you see the tube and you see the barrel of the cannon. It's not at the center. It's slightly fitted a little bit higher of the center. That's to compensate for the ballistics.
Right.
That's pretty interesting stuff. Very interesting solution. Just some time ago, I got my hands on the report of Leighton Rogers, assistant to Lawrence D. Bell, the president of Bell Aircraft Corporation. Larry Bell was very eager to send his technical team to Russia, to the Soviet Union, to see action of his product, to get some feedback. What is right? What is wrong? What can we do to improve it? He was not successful through the usual channel. What he did, he sent direct correspondence to Stalin and a painting as a gift. Believe it or not, very quickly he got permission to send the team. So it was a team of 4 engineers and led by Leighton Rogers, his assistant. And I have this report, and this is pretty revealing. So the spelling is exactly as it is written in the report. The Russian pilots fly the airplanes to get a job done, and they don't baby their equipment. They are rather matter-of-fact, but completely confident of their ability against the Germans. But they are not reckless. I want to mention this very, very important aspect, why they were considered reckless in some circles. As you can see, they did not baby their equipment. They flew it like crazy. Very hard maneuvering. They had to do the job done, right? They didn't fly by the book. And you probably, many of you read in different books and memoirs and accounts that Airacobra would get into flat spin that would be very difficult to recover. And why did it get to the flat spin? From very harsh maneuvering, first of all. Secondly, although the airframe was pretty rugged, the tail, the aft fuselage of P-39 was pretty weak. Specifically, if you look at the hatch for radio equipment, it was a pretty large area, and that was the weak spot. If you are rough with your airplane, it will break. The structure will break. So the Soviets actually resorted to field modifications at the front level to put reinforcement panels at the aft of the fuselage. Later in the war, in the last batches of P-39, Bell aircraft actually did structural reinforcements at the factory. Okay, but many Soviet planes were modified this way in the field. One of the disadvantages, but they took care of this. But once again, the test pilots of Bell were not able to duplicate or replicate this problem. Once again, they flew by the book. The Russians flew to fight and win. So, not reckless. Continuing with his report, American combat airplanes are well liked by the Russians. In the Airacobra, they like speed, rate of climb, firepower, visibility, and its rugged construction, which convinces the pilot that he can get back home if hit. They also like the tricycle landing gear, which enables them to operate from the rolling country without the need for built-in landing strips. We had first thought that they used the P-39 in ground attacks to a considerable extent using the cannon against tanks. Look at this again. And this is 1943. However, it appears that they use it for the purpose for which it was designed, as a medium-altitude interceptor pursuit against German bombers and fighters, and to escort Russian bombers and Sturmovix attack planes. Are you surprised?
Interesting stuff.
You know, you have like a big gun mounted on the airplane, or it has to be a tank buster. No, it was not. And this is an actual, admission by Assistant to Larry Bell, and they were pretty proud that it was used as designed. And it was not used as this in this role by the Americans or British. So overall Soviet assessment of P-39, let's start with concerns. So limited range, always a concern, not just for P-39, but in general. Remediated by drop tanks or forward displacement of airfields. Easy to spin, difficult to recover. So you have to have this training. So training, if you are well trained and you can really feel your airplane as if it is continuation and extension of your body, then you would not get into these situations. Structural problems of the aft fuselage and vertical stabilizer, I mentioned that the need for structural reinforcement. Damage during hard maneuvers leading to spin. Or if you get into spin, it leads to structural damage. Dangerous to bail out. Tail strikes. The Cobra didn't like its master to leave it. It wanted to come back with the pilot. Fuel and oil, so it's 100%, 100-octane fuel. The Soviets didn't have it. It was all U.S. supplied. So they mixed it with, they mixed their own fuel with 100-octane fuel, put some additives to do it. Oil quality was an issue. If the oil was not clean, not properly filtered, it will damage the engine. The engine was pretty sensitive to that. So that has to be taken care of. The positives: factory of fire, cannons plus heavy or light machine guns. And I will mention something about the guns and how they modify things. Excellent visibility. Excellent protection of a pilot, a lot of layers of armor around it. Excellent radio array, 3 receivers, 2 transmitters. Competitive in air-to-air combat with Bf-109 and Focke-Wulf 190. Tactics and pilot skills made the difference. Modification to armament. What did they do? So Pakrishkin in his memoirs mentioned that he gave a command to the regimental engineer, put all the guns, all the firepower, make a selector. I want 1 trigger squeeze to fire from all guns, okay? Everything on 1 squeeze. It's an immense amount of firepower. You don't have to switch from guns to machine guns and so forth, from 30 caliber to 50 caliber. So the engineer tinkered with schematics, made this, and those pilots in his regiment who wanted to do that did that. So no approval from the top. Many units, again, if desired by some pilots, removed the wing 30 caliber machine guns to lighten the plane, made it more maneuverable. They thought that just 37 mil and 250 calibers in the nose are sufficient. They gained advantage in higher maneuverability. Larry Bell, again, another documentation that I saw from the archives, he begged General Arnold to remove the wing guns and was denied that. So he said, oh, the Russians are doing that. Why wouldn't we do this? No, that was not authorized. But, you know, as we can see, that was pretty efficient. It was not widespread. It was like, if the pilot wants more guns, fine. If you want, you know, to remove the wing guns, fine as well. Okay, so they had this flexibility, and it was very successful.
Do you think, Ilya, there was a slightly different mindset with regards this being an aircraft produced in the US, that if you're modifying it, you're not, in a sense, criticizing Soviet design and leadership, where if it was a Soviet produced aircraft that's come to you, and if you criticize it or modify it, you're in a sense having a go at the Soviet production, Soviet design, because this is foreign. They have more leeway to modify it. Does that make any sense?
I'm not sure about that, because it allowed these modifications without any damage to the frame, to the structure, because it's all metal aircraft, okay? So it was accessible. You could just sacrificing structural integrity. And again, for the Soviet planes, they didn't have any weapons mounted in the wings. So that was not an issue. All you have is like 120 mil and 150 caliber or 250 caliber in the nose. So there is nothing to remove, okay? So you always want more. You will sacrifice everything, but you want more firepower. That was the key.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's compare ranges. So you can see a table with ranges of US-built fighters, internal with drop tanks. So it's pretty substantial, but once again, it matches the necessity and the need for general air strategy. You go far, you escort your bombers, you need range. You need range, you need range, you need range. And the Soviets, Yak-9D, 876 miles, although it was not very practical because you have 4 fuel tanks in the wings, it becomes heavy. So if you need like to fly long distance, maybe, yes, but if you need to fly in combat, you don't fill the other 2 tanks. So this number of 876 is superficial. MiG-3 with 777, that was an early warrior. It phased out very quickly. Yak-1, 440, La-5, 475, Cobra, 553. And with fuel drop tank, 812 miles. And La-7, 395. So this is like pretty good range for the Eastern Front. And once again, considering that their airfields were very close to the front, that's pretty substantial. So it can handle on its own. Top 10 Soviet aces with 40+ kills. Kozhedub, 64 kills in La-5 and La-7. Master of the air. Grigory Richkalov, 61 + 4. He started the war in I-153, transitioned to MiG-3, then to Yak-1, and finally to P-39. And we will talk about his success as a P-39 ace. Alexander Gulayev, 55 + 5, Yak-1s and P-39. Kirill Yastigneyev, 52 + 3 in La-5. Dmitry Glinka, 50 in Yak-1 and P-39. Nikolai Skamarokov, 46 + 8 in Lags and La-5 and La-7. Pakryshkin, Alexander Pakryshkin, 46 + 6, I-16, MiG-3, Yak-1, P-39. The majority in P-39, obviously. Alexander Koldunov, 46 + 1 in Yaks. Arseny Vorozheikin, 45 + 1 in Yaks. Vitaly Popkov, 41 + 1 in Lag-3 and La-5. So these are top 10. And by the way, if somebody sees that Pakryshkin had 59 kills, and that was in the literature for many years, actually starting in the publications in Life magazine and in Soviet propaganda. So that was public relations and propaganda material. 46 + 6, not 59 at all. Okay. So here are top American aces in World War II. So you can see the picture. You can see the table. 40 is the highest score. Less than the Soviets, but there are reasons for that. So if you achieve this high status, you are pulled out of the front white line and go back home and raise defense bonds and so forth. And don't forget that the length of their sorties will take hours. That's an exhaustion. It's a fatigue. You are flying at 30,000 feet, like semi-frozen. It's a tough job. It's a tough job, okay? Over the sea, over the ocean. Different thing, different theaters, different war, different air war. So you can't compare that. Or you look at the scores of the German pilots accumulating like over 100. Different air war. So these guys didn't have any break, okay? They were there from day one to the last. Now, top Soviet P-39 aces. Just let's take the total score and the score on P-39. As I mentioned, Grigory Richkalov, 61 + 4. That's the second highest ranking ace, Allied second highest ranking ace after Kozhedub. That's substantial. 54 kills in P-39. That's the highest top ranking Cobra ace. Dmitry Glinka, 50 all in Cobras. Nikolai Gulayev, 57 + 5, 41 in Cobras. By the way, he was pulled out of service in 1944 because he was accumulating too much too fast, by the way, okay? Alexander Pakryshkin, 46 + 6, 40 in Cobras. Ivan Babak, 35 + 5, all in Cobras. Mikhail Kamilkov, 33 + 7, all in Cobras. Alexei Smirnov, 35, overall 30 in Cobras. Boris Glinka, 27 + 2, all in Cobras. Alexander Klubov, 31 + 16, 27 in Cobras. Pavel Kamozin, 35 + 13, 26 + 2 in Cobras. Fyodor Arhipenko, 30 + 14, 26 in Cobras. So it's pretty substantial, very successful aces. Okay, they knew their stuff. They knew how to fight. They knew how to fly. So here are the numbers, and they tell the story. So here are some short bios. Here is #1 top ace, the hero from the 9th Guards Division Pantheon. This division was like division of aces, elite.
Yep.
So you see here his picture with double hero of the Soviet Union. He's lieutenant here, senior lieutenant. Graduated from aviation school in 1939. As I mentioned, flew I-153, Yak-1, MiG-3, P-39. Transitioned to P-39 in December of 1942. Twice a hero of the Soviet Union. 450 sorties, 122 engagements, 61 plus 4 kills. Highest P-39 ace with 54 kills in type. In and out of command of 16 Guards Regiment. Retired as Major General at age 39 in 1959. Glinka Dmitry Borisovich. Aero Club, and obviously those who were successful in this volunteer flight training, they were sent to military aviation schools, 1939, started with Yak-1, transitioned to P-39 in January 43, highest ace in Kuban in summer of 43, 40 engagements, 20 kills. Remarkable. Twice hero of the Soviet Union, literally April 43 and August 43, just in few months, accumulated tons of kills. 300 sorties, 100 engagements, 50 kills. So essentially, every second engagement was productive. Post-war career to 1960, retired as colonel. Gulayev, Aero Club, Military Aviation School, 1940. 16 plus 2 in Yak-1, and the rest of them in P-39. Transitioned in August 43. Double hero of the Soviet Union, 250 sorties, 69 engagements, 55 plus 5 kills. That's like several kills in one engagement. Last sortie was in August 14th, 1944. He was removed from flight duty, sent to the academy, military academy, because obviously somebody was making place for another triple hero of the Soviet Union. So they decided, okay, more than 2 would be too much. Retired as Colonel General in 1972. Bakrishkin, Military Aviation School in 1938. He started his military career as a mechanic in the air unit, then went to the flight school. Flew I-16, MiG-3, Yak-1, P-39 from March 43. Triple hero of the Soviet Union, 650 sorties. That's a mistake. 156 engagements, 46 plus 6 kills. 30 subordinates awarded hero of the Soviet Union, 3 of them twice. Dmitry Glinka, Klubov, and Grigory Richkalov. Became Marshal of Aviation in December 72 in the air defense role. If you can see in his picture, he has a decoration here. It's a distinguished, one of the top highest military awards of the United States. Babak Ivan Ilyich, Aero Club, Military Aviation School, 1942, flew Yak-1, P-40, P-39. In February 45, became the commander of the 16 Guards Regiment, hero of the Soviet Union, 330 sorties, 103 engagements, 35 plus 5 kills. Became prisoner of war, liberated from the camp in 45. Kamilkov, Mikhail Sergeyevich, Aero Club, Military Aviation School, 1940, flight instructor. 15 victories in Kuban Air Campaign. Squadron commander, later deputy regiment commander. 321 sorties, 75 engagements, 33 plus 7, all victories in P-39. Retired as a colonel in 1961. Became hero of the Soviet Union after the war in June 1945. They had like a big bulk of officers awarded that post-war, immediately post-war. You can see how young these guys are. One of them became the regiment commander in the age of 25. Smirnov, Alexei Semyonovich, Aero Club, Military Aviation School, 1938. Experience during Soviet-Finnish War, flew I-153, P-39D, then P-39Q, double hero of the Soviet Union, 306 sorties, 71 engagements, 35 kills once again. On average, 1 kill and 2 engagements. Very productive. Glinka, Boris Borisovich, that's the brother of Dmitry Glinka. They were in the same unit. Aero Club, the civil aviation pilot school in 1936, was an instructor in aviation school. 16 Guards Regiment in Kuban in early 1943. 15 victories by mid-June of 1943. In May 44, named the commander of the regiment. 200 sorties, 27 plus 2 kills, all in P-39. Became hero of the Soviet Union on May 24th, 1945. And look at these guys. Young guys, right? But they look like pretty mature, big dudes. Lobov, Alexander Fedorovich. Aero Club, Military Aviation School, 1939. Just pay attention how similar their flight careers are. Aero Club, Military Aviation School, most of them pre-war. So lots of experience. I-153, P-39 in early 43. Hero of the Soviet Union, April 44, June 45, but he was killed in November 44, so that's posthumously awarded the second star. 457 sorties, 95 engagements, 31 plus 16. Very successful ace, one of the favorites of Pokreshkin. Kamozin, Pavel Mikhailovich, Aero Club Flight, Military Aviation School, 1938. I-16, Lag 3, P-39, transitioned in summer 43. Twice hero of the Soviet Union, 188 sorties, 63 engagements, 36 plus 13 again. Very productive. So almost every second engagement is a victory. 26 plus 2 kills flying P-39. Arhipenko, Fyodor Fyodorovich, Aero Club, Military Aviation School, 1939. Again, very similar. I-153, Lag 3 Yaks, P-39 from July 43. Transition to P-39, became the, I believe he was deputy regiment commander for gunnery. 467 sorties, 102 engagements, 30 plus 14 victories, 19 of them in P-39. Hero of the Soviet Union in June, retired as colonel 1959. So the question is, what do we really know now? Now we know that P-39 was competitive air-to-air fighter, predominantly assigned to elite units, guards, or soon to become guards. Soviet Air Force employed P-39 primarily in air superiority role. Role was important, but secondary or tertiary to air superiority role. Lacking armor-piercing ammunition, M437mm cannon was not effective against tanks, although they did fire on them. Doesn't mean that they were successful. Was not employed as a tank buster, as many people thought. Was an outstanding combat aircraft in the realities of Eastern Front. And I want to emphasize, in the realities of Eastern Front.
Yeah.
And that's the key to the story. So that concludes my slides, and I am ready to answer questions.
Well, quite a few of them you actually answered as you went along, but there are a few left, so I'll present them in the order I've got them. So people are asking about what influence the P-39 had on later Soviet-produced aircraft. So a representative question from Jay is, I'm curious too if the P-39 inspired the MiG-15 to have a 37mm cannon. It was used to intercept US Air Force bombers. So curious to see here if the Airacobra dealt with the HE-11 and Junkers 88. So did the Soviets look at what the P-39 could do and use those designs in their own aircraft later?
I think this is a great question, and I think most likely yes. And I want to emphasize, if you look at P-39, if you look at any picture, it has all the prerequisites of a modern jet fighter aircraft. Teardrop canopy, tricycle gear, center-mounted ammunition, heavy caliber gun, okay? The radio control, one button, so you don't have to do different things, okay? So it's like it had all the characteristics of the modern jet fighter. It was a pioneering aircraft. Of course, it influenced many decisions, not necessarily, I would say probably MiG-15, why not? I think clearly that, you know, the Soviets wanted big guns. They got it.
Brilliant. We're getting lots of questions about the P-39 and the P-63. So I'm going to extend an invitation to you to come back in the future, if you want to, and talk about the P-63 and maybe the evolution, as we're talking about, of the P-39 and other aircraft. If you'd like to, you're more than welcome to come back and talk about the P-63s. But I think that's a subject for another day. So we had questions about the Soviet claims that the aces, because people question why the German aces got to such high figures. Were the British Royal Air Force Fighter Command inflating their figures? From your understanding of the Soviet archives, do you think the Soviet fighter pilots or P-39 pilots had a tendency to overclaim, or do you think they're fairly accurate, the figures?
Well, the number of claims, the numbers are always contested.
Yeah.
You cannot say definitively. In some cases, there were overclaims, no doubt about it.
Yeah.
In some cases, a lot of kills were not counted because it was no evidence, or evidence was not reliable. Like, let's take Pokrishkin with claims of 59, and some people will say, well, actually he had over 100, but they were not counted. Well, official documents, 46 plus 6. Nothing you can do about it. You and people who did research in Soviet archives, they saw all the documents. So they saw regimental documents, they saw division documents, they saw Army documents. All numbers are matching, 46 plus 6. Why the number of 59 started to appear in 1944 in all the publications, the Soviet publications and American publications, they made him a poster child for propaganda.
Right.
Using Lend-Lease aircraft, P-39, top Allied ace, got attention of President Roosevelt, got all this, you know, high U.S. decorations. So that's another story. But the claims are claims, so it's very hard to. Well, you can see the film, right? You can see the exploded damage, but after that, the plane comes back home. The pilot is alive. So what would you take from this? So it's always contested.
Okay, thank you. Ian Carr asked, was freezing of the cannon an issue with remote engine locations similar to the RAF with the 20mm Hispano?
I don't think it was at these altitudes that they were flying at. It shouldn't be an issue.
Okay, thank you. That was a quick one. The Allison engine. So Gary Giamara said, did they discover that the Allison engine could be safely run at a much higher manifold pressure that was originally recommended, first discovered by Royal Australian Air Force pilots in 1942 and widely used after that? So did the Soviets discover that?
They did. And actually in the report by Leighton Rogers, he went into argument with the young Soviet pilot when he saw that he shoveled the throttle when the engine was still cold. And he told him, "What are you doing? You may lose the engine when you will need it." And the pilot says, "Oh, I may be gone before the engine will quit. So I need to go. I need to take off fast." So they just rammed the revs and definitely use them in combat. No doubt about it.
Mm. Okay, thank you. You talked earlier about the all-metal construction of the P-39, and there were various air forces had issues with plywood construction and things like. Do you think that at its base level, it's just strength is part of the P-39 success with the Soviets? I mean, you stressed for your conclusions are based on the air war in the Eastern Front, but its sturdiness and its reliability broadly, is that a key factor?
Definitely it is, because all metal construction is will allow you to come back if it is properly designed. Okay.
Yeah.
When you have a plywood cover of the wooden wing, you have environmental effects like moisture, changes in temperature, high swings of temperature day and night. They had significant widespread disintegration of the cover on the wings right before major operations around Kursk area. Okay, they had to send brigades to do repairs urgently. So now you have specific issues with the wooden construction. And then immediately after the war, they had to write off all the wooden or mixed constructions airplanes because their longevity was in question. So they basically said, write them off, surplus them, okay, on the metal. Also, one of the engineers from the Leighton Rogers team talked to Yakovlev and Dr. Shishkin from the flight labs, Tsagi, and mentioned that with the wooden construction and plywood wings, the issue of flutter would be more pronounced, and they agreed with him. Yes. There were issues with wood, absolutely. So all metal construction, but once again, you're talking wooden construction, that's plentiful supply of wood in Russia.
Yeah.
The workforce training, the machining was not really available in such a quantities and quality to do widespread metal airplanes. In fact, a lot of machine tools in the factories that were building bombers, all metal bombers, were American Lend-Lease supplied. So that's,
thank you.
A significant factor.
So you talked earlier on one of the early slides about ground-air cooperation, combined arms. So Green Fire said, if you get a chance, Woody, if it doesn't come up, I'd be curious to hear what Lend-Lease, with Lend-Lease and all, how the Soviet pilots utilized radio in their fighter wings, knowing how bad the Germans were compared to the Brits. So from your research, were the Soviets pretty good at that radio and communication aspect within their fighter groups?
At first, they were terrible. First of all, most of the fighter planes didn't have radio at all. Then gradually, every 10th fighter would have a transmitter, and 9 will just be limited to receiver. Poor quality of radios, poor quality of sound. So some pilots would say, it's useless, I can't hear a damn thing. Okay, so why do I need it? Take it away, I don't want it. Then comes P-39, comes Lend-Lease radio equipment for ground vectoring stations. Now you have to teach the pilots and teach the officers that are in charge of communications how to use it properly. And then they become successful. Now you have ground vectoring. Now you don't have to waste your engines and fuel, precious fuel, you know, any success, and then you have to come back, and then the enemy is in the air and there is nothing to meet them. But rather you command, okay, we see the enemy flight going, now take off, intercept them. Yes, I would say from 43 and to the mastery of it starting in 44. Before that, pathetic.
Okay, thank you. Bomber Command Historia asked, or commented really, a bit strange that the Soviets did not allow US aircrew in to train their pilot, because they did with British aircrew. So have you any comment about that? You know, they sent all these created aircraft and they flew these aircraft in, but they didn't send people over to familiarize the Soviets, but they did for British. Any comment?
Actually, they did send a small contingent in 1942, I think, to Murmansk area to familiarize them with P-39s. If I am not mistaken, that Howard Zemka was at this delegation.
Right.
Okay, but it's not that they did not accept anyone.
Right, okay.
But they were pretty paranoid having foreigners on their soil.
Okay, fair enough.
If we're talking about British, that was the 151st Wing in Murmansk area.
Okay.
Yep, on Hurricanes.
Thank you. So the next question, you mentioned in your range slide, you mentioned the use of drop, or the potential use of drop tanks. Trent Telenko said, can you ask Ilya about Soviet use of drop tanks with the P-39 and whether Soviet aviation made much use of them? He's found precious little in English on Soviet fighter use of drop tanks. So obviously you've been into the Soviet archives. Was it something they used a lot, or was it an occasional thing?
They did not have drop tanks for Yak-1s, or Yaks, or Lavachkins, okay? So what is left? P-39. P-39 had drop tanks. So they were provided. They used them when they needed them.
Right.
Obviously, in Pakryshkin's memoirs and in one other memoir, they used drop tanks over the flying over the Black Sea for free hunt missions. Long-range flights, pretty successful. They were intercepting German transport aircrafts between Kuban and Crimea. Killed a lot of them. So you have to have drop tanks by all means for these long-range missions. So yes, they did use them.
Okay, thank you. Well, I think
not in close-range combat when you have an airfield like few kilometers behind the enemy lines, behind the front lines. Yeah, but for long-range missions, pre-hunt, they did use them. So Pakryshkin gave a command to the engineer, mount the auxiliary tank, I'm going for a mission.
Well, there's some people in the sidebar who knew their stuff about the P-39, but you've topped them with your knowledge. Representative comment from who should I put one up there? From Barry there. Really enjoyed this deep dive into the P-39 Soviet use. Thanks, Ilya. Great presentation. So
thank you.
Yeah, you've taken it to a level of understanding that beyond our competitors. So that's really good. So Ilya, I say thanks very much for a fantastic presentation. I will invite you back to do something about the P-39 stroke P-63 if you'd like to do that in the future. That'd be great. Thank you everybody for your fantastic questions. Tomorrow we're talking about opium in World War II trade and the importance of that to the US and other nations. I'm really looking forward to that one. Another really unique show for the channel. But in the meantime, I will see you all again tomorrow. Thanks very much for your questions. Thank you, Ilya. And don't forget to click like and subscribe, buy my guest books, visit their websites, etc., etc. Cheers, everybody. Thanks.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.